At this time, we will call the September 27th, 2023 Diversion Authority Land Management Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherwing.
I am here.
Mayor Peterson. Mr. Redlinger. Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Borboom.
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Here.
Mr. Olson.
Here.
Mr. Breitling.
Yes.
Ms. Majo.
Yes.
Ms. Preston. Mr. Zimmerman.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. You have before you the minutes, or at least you've had them before you online, of the previous meeting. Hopefully you've reviewed them. Does anyone have any additions or corrections or a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. And moving on to item 3, the approval of the order of the agenda. Does anyone have any additions or changes to the agenda or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
And on to item number 4. Southern Embankment Reach 1, excess land sale. Ms. Smith.
Yes. Hello. So on page 5, I have it pulled up on the screen for you. We're going to go through the first potential excess land sale. I'm going to skip forward a little bit just to the map because I'm a visual person and this seems to make a little bit more sense when you look at it this way. So this is Reach SE1. The portions of this that were purchased originally were based off some early right-of-way drawings that were submitted from the Army Corps of Engineers to us. In subsequent drawings, we were actually required to acquire less fee than was originally proposed, which has left us with remnant parcels, you can see highlighted here in green, in anywhere from 1 to 3 acres. Again, not intentional that we did this, but just kind of an outcome of the project and trying to get ahead of it and getting the necessary property rights. So what we're proposing is to go through the excess lands policy for these strips. So this 5214, 5024Y, and the 5278. So I'll scroll back up then to the memo and just kind of go through some of this. So you can see the asset land parcel size range, again, anywhere from the 1.6 acres up to the 4.04 acres. You can see the purchase dates for these range from 2021, and the last one was in February of 2022. We also have the purchase price listed here. This is approximately for 5024 was $5,500 an acre. This 5014 would be approximately $5,500 an acre. And the 5278 is approximately $7,000 an acre for the original purchase price. We do have the former owners and then the adjacent owners. You can see the former owners are the adjacent owners. So if you are familiar with the excess lands policy, first it would go to the stakeholders. I don't think anybody's interested in it in the stakeholder group, but then the next one would be the previous landowners and then the adjacent landowners. So we go through that excess lands policy and offer them this land to purchase before it went to public auction. You can see we are currently leasing this out in the 2023 farmland leases. You can see how much we're bringing in a year on each of those parcels. Again, it's pretty nominal just because the acreage size is so low. So the recommendation is that the land committee today does approve us taking this to the MFDA board meeting tomorrow, seeking approval to go ahead and move through the excess lands policy.
And the intention would be to offer it back to the adjacent owners for the previous owners.
Right. Commissioner Sherling, that's correct. So per the excess lands policy, we actually have to offer it to the stakeholders first. And so that is a whole process where we have to allow for a minimum of 30 days. Of course, each of the stakeholders could waive that right early. And then it would go through the previous landowner, and then it goes to the adjacent landowners. And if nobody's interested, it would go out to public auction.
And how are we determining the value?
So the excess land policy allows for the executive director to determine market value. I did make a recommendation to Joel that we just try to sell it back at the price at which we purchased it, even though a couple years have passed. So
It would be really great to be consistent in how we apply this policy. And, we spent a lot of time on this policy. So I don't want to, but obviously as we utilize it, it may need some tweaking. But at this point, it's all in your hands. And I would just hope, I'm probably preaching to the choir here because, how we've set precedents in the past, it would just be really good to try to, and I granted sometimes it doesn't work that way. You might need to set market value. But maybe you want to comment to that.
Yeah, Chair Sherling, certainly. And yeah, the policy is not crystal clear on how we determine value, so it kind of leaves it up to my discretion to determine the best possible way to determine that value. Generally, Jody's going to recommend a process to go through to determine that value. In this case, I agreed with what she had recommended from the simple fact that these are very small parcels. The overall value of these parcels, doesn't warrant a full appraisal, the whole thing. We could do market analysis. We could do those sorts of things. Generally, I feel like in this case, these were properties that were taken from the adjacent landowners because we thought we needed them. We didn't need it. And so I do feel it's prudent to probably offer it back at the price that we paid for it, just because it was not necessary for the project. And, as far as equity for the landowners, I felt like that was probably the appropriate route to take. Some of the other ones that we'll talk about later maybe have some different dynamics, and we can address those as well. But generally, all these will have to go through the land committee as well. So if there's disagreement from the committee on how we determine the value, we would certainly go back and take a second look at that as well. So,
Well, that would seem appropriate to me. Commissioner Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I thought that in the lands policy that if it were to go back to the property owners who we acquired it from, that it would be at that same price. I thought we had put that in our policy.
not necessarily, Commissioner Campbell. So if the property owner has the right of first offer still on the property, then we would return that at the purchase price. But the policy isn't necessarily clear, I don't think, Jody.
No, I can read it to you real quick. It says, for excess lands located outside the geographical boundaries and extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction of the city of Fargo and the city of Moorhead, second preference should be given to the prior landowner. The prior landowner should be provided the opportunity to acquire excess lands at market value prior to the excess land being available to adjacent landowners as set forth herein.
I guess that would make sense when you think that something like this could be 10 years from the time we acquired it, and there could be different values. I guess that does make sense. That answers my question.
The other thing it needs to do is set a base price if it were to go to auction. So if these landowners aren't interested in purchasing it, they do risk, they do risk the fact that they may not have that land anymore, and
Right.
it'll go to a different bidder. So and then the price certainly could go up. And right now I would expect that it would, just because of the way land values have gone. Anyone else? Anyone online have any Any input?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Would
Commissioner.
there be a minimum?
Pardon me?
If it did go to auction, would there be a minimum?
That is my understanding, that that would be the minimum then. If it's established that it would be market value, then, and correct me if I'm wrong, then that would be the minimum value. I would hate to see us having to go and get all of these appraised. And I don't think
No,
it's
thank you.
necessary because I really think that there are professionals out there that deal in land sales every day, all day, and can tell you what these properties are going to ultimately sell for. So, I think you could just go down to a coffee shop and probably pick up that information pretty easily from several different people that would have an opinion, and they'd probably be pretty close.
So what if there are no bids?
That is actually something the Commissioner Sherling and I spoke about last night. I think if in the instance that there is no bids, I think we'll need to reconvene about what the minimum bid would be and have another conversation in the future with that. But if there was no bids, then we would just continue to manage and lease it out as we currently are.
I think the only time that would even be considered is if you had something that was somewhat landlocked by other farms and,
Yeah.
it was just such a tiny little piece that nobody was interested in. But in this day and age, the way farmland's going, I just think somebody would even pick up an acre or two if they had an opportunity to. Mr. Zimmerman.
Just a really simple question, where it's appropriate, these parcels already have flowage easements recorded on them?
Absolutely. Yep. The other thing I should note too is this is our first exercise through the policy. So if we're lacking information in the memo that you're looking for, or you would like to see something differently, please let me know. And then when we come back through the next time, I can modify and adjust if there's information you'd like to have included in this as well.
And I appreciate that question because we got so into the weeds when we created this policy. We wouldn't want to miss a flowage easement. So, anything else that we should be thinking of right now. So, any other concerns or questions about the policy in general or about item number 4 in particular? Anyone online? Or a motion?
I would move the recommendation to bring it to the Diversion Authority to follow the excess lands policy for the sale of those parcels.
And should we include in that our recommended method of, just giving Joel some direction?
Isn't that already in the policy?
Okay.
So my motion that says to follow the policy
Okay.
would
Very good.
do that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Breitling. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Borboom,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Breitling. Yes. Ms. Maggio,
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you. Item number 5, Cass County right-of-way excess land sales.
Yes, so this one, Mr. Benson's been very patient. I think we've been working on this one for about a year now, and it's just kind of gone to the back burner a couple of times. But we are looking for an approval on OIN's 1185Y2, 922Y3, 855Y1, 897Y1, 507Y1, 510Y1, and 547Y1 to begin the process of pushing these through our excess lands policy. These would really just make it to the first step because they'd go to the stakeholder first. Cass County has expressed interest in these parcels, as you noted, for the excess right-of-way. I will skip down just a couple of pages because, again, I'm pretty visual. So you can see Cass County has interest in these just to extend their right-of-way for future usage. Been working with Jason on these. The county would purchase this back from us at the price that we paid for it. And Jason has taken this forward to Cass County, I believe, in July, if I'm not mistaken, and that has been approved. And so you can see on each one of these parcels the amount of land that would be transferred over to Cass County if the board approves this tomorrow.
Great, thank you. Yeah, pretty important for Cass to have these extensions to our right-of-way, just because of the difficulty to get them in the future, and we have them right now. So I think it's an opportunity we don't want to miss. I don't know, Jason, do you have anything that you want to add to it? No?
No, he's like, it's finally moving forward. And my understanding, as far as we're aware today, this is all of the excess right-of-way that Cass County is needing within the project limits as of today.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. That's correct. So in our review, we looked from the north end of the project at County Road 31 and 4 all the way down to the southern embankment at all of our county road crossings where there was excess adjacent land to identify corridors where we only had maybe statutory 33 feet of easement or maybe only 50 feet of right-of-way. So that way we could acquire out to either 75 or 100 depending on the roadway. And so this is the only time that we'll be coming forward from Cass County's standpoint for these type of road right-of-way acquisitions.
Very good. Anyone have any other questions for Jody or Jason? Or a motion?
Move to approve the
Roger motion.
authorization previously offered by the county.
Thank you. And Roger Olson seconded that. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Charlene?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Borboom?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Breitling?
Yes.
Ms. Marjo? Mr. Zimmerman? That is everyone.
Great, thank you. And moving right along, item number 6, 507Y excess lands recommendation.
So this is the third and final excess lands recommendation. So this one was intentionally chosen for two reasons. One, I kind of want to exercise the full excess lands policy. I've been in the position in previous careers where I've created policy administrative rules and I go to implement them and I'm like, that's not quite behaving as the intention was. So trying to find a parcel of land that I believe will go out to auction, allow us to get further through the process than a stakeholder or neighboring property owner, and get it through to make sure this policy is behaving as it was intended to. The other piece about this is the northern half of this is pasture land and the southern half of this parcel is tillable land. On the northern half of the pasture land, the well has broken, and we've gotten an estimate to replace that well, and I believe it's in excess of $11,000. So for us to get our return on that, because we're having to lease it out at a much reduced rate at $20 an acre, it would take us decades to get that return on investment for the well that we'd be putting in there. So instead of struggling to kind of lease this parcel out, and then it would become a maintenance issue with us with potential weed growth out there, I think it's best that we just use this parcel and again kind of exercise the excess lands policy. You can see it's a full almost quarter section, and we just needed kind of it would be the southeast corner of this for the project. Originally when we acquired this, the original landowner wanted us to purchase the full quarter section. Again, it was purchased in late 2019. The original purchase price was $5,300 an acre. That sounds accurate for that time. I do believe that the value of land has gone up exponentially since that time. The former owner was Mr. John Olson. We have a list of some of the adjacent owners here. I'm not sure if they're interested or not. We have not approached them, again, because we'd be sending out some formal notifications through that excess lands policy. You can see in the property management approach, the $20 per acre, and again, the well replacement for $11,000. So it would take approximately 28 years for us to get our return on investment off of that well. We do currently lease it out. You can see the farmland rate here at $135 per acre in 2023. And then you can see the pasture land rate, or I'm sorry, 2022. The pasture land rate was at $40 an acre. We did increase the farmland, so the tillable land, up to $150 an acre, which is a going rate in 2023. But we did have to reduce the pasture land acre value just because he wasn't willing, at the beginning of the season, he wasn't willing to rent it at all because he's having to haul water in for his cattle. Also doesn't want to make the investment in replacing that well if he's not going to own the land long term. And so I'll pull the map up so you can see here. This is just a small bit here, approximately 9 acres that was needed for the project. And then you can see down here, this is at the very northern point of the channel here, so closer to I-29 to I-94. So any questions that I can answer?
Anyone have any questions? So your approach to this would be a market value then?
This would be, so my recommendation was to get a full appraisal on this to determine the market value, just because it's been 4 years since we purchased this and we've seen, the price of land go up. There's also some unique circumstances to it, with half of it being pasture land and half of it being agriculture tillable land. We're not selling it, the northern 80 and the southern 80. We're actually selling it as one unit and with the well not working on there. And so we do anticipate, that this then at 151 acres, and even if you graciously said it was worth $7,700 an acre, that this is a significant sale for the MFDA. So that's why the recommendation to get an appraisal done by Crown on this.
So we sold some river property that was pretty unique in Clay County a long time ago. Did we get an appraisal on that? Do you remember? I think it was before you,
I think
Jody.
it probably was before my time because I'm not recalling that.
But you two would have been here. I'm pretty sure it was in Clay County. I mean, I know it was in Minnesota.
I do not recall that.
It was like a remnant before we had this policy, and it went to, maybe I'm wrong here, but it went to auction and it did very, very well. I see Nathan shaking his head.
Yeah, I remember that property going to auction. I don't remember how we set the minimum bid on it, but yeah, I remember the sale price exceeded what we anticipated.
It kind of ended up being like a hunting property,
correct.
That was the.
Do we have to make the 30-day notice to all the member entities?
Yes, we do.
So nothing is going to happen until that 30 days is up.
That is correct. And I should have stated at the beginning, all 3 of these have gone to the Cass County Joint Water Resource District Board. So they are aware, and then discussions have happened at our technical advisory group. So we have Bob Zimmerman and Nathan Bourbon and Jason's in there. So there's quite a bit of understanding before we bring it here that these excess lands are going up for sale. So hopefully if there's an interest or concern, it will have been brought forward. I haven't had any on these particular ones, so not to say in the future that wouldn't happen, but we would send out a formal notification. We would wait the respective 30 days again, unless we got a quicker response saying, go ahead and move in the process. We're not interested in this one. And then what would happen is we'd have to go to the previous landowner per our policy. That we're required to give them 30 days to respond. And then we go to the adjacent landowners. We give them 30 days to respond. I don't see this as being a quick one. The other ones, like hopefully Jason will be able to wrap that up, maybe even here by the end of the calendar year. But this one I would fully expect, and I've actually advised Madeline to go ahead and put this on the 2024 lease schedule, because if we need to get through all these steps, it's not like on day 31, all of a sudden we're sending the next letter out. There's some time that kind of happens in between that. And so I would fully expect that this actually won't go up sale or out to auction until the fall, so about this time next year.
Yes,
Thank you.
Commissioner.
I'm going to one of Bob's questions earlier. And I don't know that we have a lot of flowage easements on the very northern end of the project. But how about in terms of additional right-of-way purposes? Are there any restrictions to that land that are there now that were not there before?
There are not any additional restrictions on this, and I know that there's a project that's being studied for Cass County for potential bypass, and it does not intersect with this parcel at all with the current design that's sitting out there, so.
And nobody wants to swap, huh?
Nobody wants to swap with any of the land up north. I've not had a single request for any of those parcels. So,
Okay. Any other questions? Or motion?
Move to institute the process of moving forward on the sale of this property.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Was there someone online? Okay, then roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Borboom,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Breitling,
Yes.
Ms. Majo, Mr. Zimmerman. And that is everyone.
And the motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 7, other business.
Sure. Mary, if I can, just maybe going back to the lands policy, when it comes to the process for reselling or whatever, does our policy talk about taking into considerations the restrictions we put on them for values?
I don't think
So
I understand.
going back to, let's just say that one of these properties that we're dealing with does have flowage easements tied to them. That value has been decreased because of the flowage easement.
That's correct.
And does our lands policy take that into consideration?
I believe it would, just because we're having to determine current market value. And so the market value would be with any property right that we need on that, whether that be, we're very cognizant of any needs the county might need. We have a lot of utility needs to get some easements across certain properties. And we're trying to accommodate those, make sure those easements are in place, plus the flowage easement prior to whether it be the excess lands policy or in our negotiations to settle any eminent domain cases, then we're also taking that consideration. So when we transfer the property over, it has all those encumbrances on it already. So, and the landowner is aware of that as well. So that's been disclosed to them.
And I think Commissioner Mojo had asked the question earlier, so when we're talking about setting a minimum price, that minimum price also has to take into consideration those restrictions on
That
the
is
land.
correct.
Okay.
Very good. Any other questions? Any other business? If not, it appears that our next meeting is to be determined.
Right.
So we will see you all then, and I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.